with the way Congress is right now, I don't believe that we'll be able to get any strong climate change legislation put forward until we have both the Democratic House, Senate, and presidency. I do believe that we'll be able to take the House and Senate in 2018, but we still have to deal with Trump. So I think in 2020 we could maybe get something passed. Ultimately, those who are involved in the environmental issues recognize that the things that we're doing today they don't just affect us today. The changes that we make today, we're still going to have environmental issues for years to come. It takes, I think it takes more than a decade for the methane that's been released to subside, to where it's not affecting our environment as it is. So we need to have drastic change. We need to go to renewable sources. We have the ability to do it. The problem is the oil lobby, the coal lobbies, they have such a stronghold on our government. And ultimately things aren't going to change unless we fix the corruption in our government. But yeah, I'm a strong advocate for renewable sources of energy.
So ultimately, I think this needs to be built into our infrastructure plan, wind, solar, geothermal. We have abundant sources right here in North Texas. President Trump talks about $1.5 trillion infrastructure plan, but I don't really see anything coming out of that. Not only that, he fails to say where these budget cuts are coming from. And so I find that a little bit scary. I'm afraid that he's going to end up gutting some of our necessary institutions that we need in order to try and pay for infrastructure, where in fact he's actually breaking down our government. But as far as immediate climate change progress, I believe that needs to be built directly into this infrastructure plan.
So I actually support a bill that Representative Gabbard introduced into the House this past year. It's House Bill 3671. It's Off Fossil Fuel for a Better Future of America Act. And I think that what that act will do is it basically takes us away from the dependence on coal, and it shifts us to wind and solar. Because I think that is the path that we've got to start going and moving as a country. When Donald Trump was campaigning, he basically stated that he was going to bring back the coal companies. And he got a lot of people to believe him in West Virginia. And what we're seeing is that's not going to happen. We've got to start looking at how we can make sure that we are creating an environment that will be beneficial to our children and to our grandchildren. And I think by making sure that we are focusing on the wind and solar, those are things that will help with the clean energy, and those are things that will be able to better our country. And so if I'm elected, I will be fighting to make sure that we are getting away from our dependency on coal and oil, and that we are basically putting our efforts into clean energy and those resources.
Those large companies that are now doing sodas and fruit juices are now spending their money buying up water sources because they already know that in the future we're going to have a shortage of water. And I think until we bring it home to Congress and let them know that it's going to be an economic pain for them or us, until we address that issue, I don't think we're going to really do anything about climate change. And water is our biggest source that we use in this country. Everybody uses water. But I also believe, like Vice President Al Gore, we must educate ourselves and educate the Congress. And I think maybe the best way to do that is to start educating our children so they can educate their parents so that we can have some action, because out of the mouth of babes comes some miraculous things. Look at what's going on with the gun problem right now. The children are speaking up. And it's hard as a parent to go home and to ignore your child that's sitting there telling you information that's going to save your lives. Also, economically in Ellis County, we've got a great capacity for wind energy, and we're not using it. And that's a great economic endeavor that could bring in more jobs as well as save the environment. So I will be working toward those things as your next Congresswoman. Thank you.
We still have a minute.
I'm sorry, I'm done. Okay.
Okay, the next question. There are a limited number of things that you can do with campaign funds after an election is over. What would you do with your campaign money in the event you are not selected to proceed to the general election? And we have John up first.
So if I am not elected to move forward into the general election, the funds that I have left over in my campaign would basically go into the campaigns of the local people. As we know, politics and being able to flip and change a district to blue starts at the local level. And we've got some amazing candidates that are running all up and down the ballot. A lot of them don't have primary opponents right now. So once we get through the primary, there's going to be some people that are going to be knocking on doors and block walking. And so if I have money left over from my campaign, that money would be going to the efforts of those individuals to make sure that we are creating a blue Tarrant County and potentially a blue state of Texas.
So, similar to John, a little bit of difference. If I have any money left over, it's going to the Democratic nominee of this race.
Well, Levi just stole my thunder. Because running for office, as all four of us will tell you, it is very financially painful. And it seems like no matter how much you raise, you need some more. Because we've got 737,000 people we're trying to reach in District 6. And it takes a lot of resources to do that. Because we can't walk to every house and we can't possibly meet every person that we need to meet. So I would turn the money over to any of my nominees, any of my opponents here if they win and I don't. And then I would take a 10% of it and give it to my church.
I might differentiate a little bit. I'm in this race because I feel like I have the only plan that can really win. You know, I told you in the beginning, you know, I don't believe that we've been putting forward the candidates that I think can beat the Republican option in this district. You know, my funds will go to a race that I feel has a strong chance of winning, but also where there's a strong progressive candidate going forward. And ultimately that's what I plan to do, you know, once if I'm not the nominee. I plan to get behind a candidate that I can be passionate about. I want to get behind a candidate that the average voter can be proud to have as a representative. And so I will put my excess donations to that candidate. How am I doing? You got a minute? Okay. You know, I said in the beginning, you know, the average Democratic candidate is not going to do it for this district, in my mind. You know, I don't want to discourage people. But, you know what, we have to find a way to reach outside the Democratic Party. And if I don't feel that my opponents have that message, you know, I don't want to waste money and effort for something that I don't feel can be successful. So, you know, I hate to be a downer, but, you know, I need to be supportive of somebody who I think needs to be the change in our political system.
Okay, now going on the flip side. Say you win the nomination and the general. As a freshman representative in a highly competitive district, what issues would you highlight with your voice? And we've got Ruby going first.
Oh, wonderful. I'd love to talk about transportation because in Tarrant County, in North Texas, our greatest frustration is driving these roads. You can take your pick, whether it's I-30, 360, I-20, 183, the LBJ, there is gridlock all over. And so Eddie Bernice Johnson is right now on the Transportation Committee, so I would like to join her and then lock arms with her because she's got the experience from being there and putting forth some legislation that's gonna send some transportation grants and some private-public partnership dollars to this area so that we can actively work on transportation. Our mayor here in Arlington has been frustrated with that one thing. When I met with him, he said the current congressman would not help him get transportation dollars into Arlington. And so you and I both know, driving here, that we need that. And then the second thing I would do is work to put education first. Because as I said before, education covers everybody and everything. And we need to be a better educated community. And I would look at extending our education system from just K through 12, from K through 14. Because I believe that our kids deserve it if they qualify for it. What's that, 1 minute? Oh, okay. And then the next thing I would do is I really want to work on livable wages. That is important to me. I was just reading today in the Star-Telegram that it's hard to buy homes for most families because the wages have not kept up with the cost of living. So the two can't come together and let people have their American dream, which is to purchase a home. So I believe that those things would be my top priorities. And I would also work on immigration because I know what a struggle it is for those students who are what we call DACA, that are here through no fault of their own. Those would be the things that I would be pushing for as a newbie in Congress, as a freshman in Congress. Thank you.
So if I am elected as a freshman congressman, I would be working, my first priority would be healthcare. Having been in the healthcare industry for the past 13 years, I see what a struggle many people face. For individuals who have pre-existing conditions, to individuals who are basically having to pay $2,300 to $3,000 for their medication. We've got to get a system in place that will basically protect everyone. I know that the ACA is an amazing insurance plan that we have. There's some great things to the ACA of being able to stay on until you're 26 or 25 with your parents, protecting pre-existing conditions. Those things are good with the ACA. The problem is the ACA is not working for everyone. We still have continuous rising costs for premiums and for medication. And so that's why I would be fighting to make sure that we do have that Medicare for All plan in place to be able to protect and offer health care to everyone. The second thing that I would be working on is clean energy. I feel that as a country, we have got to get away from our dependency on coal. We've got to make sure that we have an environment that we can provide for our children and for our grandchildren. We also have to make sure that we have people that are not career politicians. And so I will be fighting to make sure that we have term limits in place. Because I believe once you've been in office for 6, 8, 10, 12, 30 years, you basically then become part of the problem. And so I will be fighting to make sure that we have some type of term limits in place. For me, I have pledged that I will only serve 3 terms, but I will be working with other people to make sure that we have some reasonable plan in place to make sure we have a good Congress that is listening to the constituents.
So I agree with John. I laid out my priorities in the beginning, which is healthcare. Although we have a little bit different way of getting there, I believe in amending the ACA with a public option and automatic enrollment. That public option would be TRICARE, which is what I have. I pay $500 on the year. I pay $12 copay, pennies on the dollar to get a prescription. But I think that's a little bit more feasible in reaching that goal, rather than just going for Medicare for all or John's plan. But more immediately, to the point, an immediate change, I would get buy-in from the Republican Party on this wall. This wall is an absolute waste of money. The reason being, first let me say, I worked with a squadron that did drug interdiction ops at the border. Much of our resources are spent dealing with good families just trying to get to America. The criminals, they're tunneling underground. I was stationed in San Diego, they tunnel underground up into homes. Don't forget how El Chapo escaped prison. Tunnel underground. The wall will not stop the criminals. It's just stopping the good people who we need to provide a comprehensive immigration plan for. Thank you.
Everything that my opponents have said can be fixed if we fix one thing: get corruption out of politics. The reason we have issues with these things are because we still have corruption. I'm an activist. There aren't too many issues that I'm not passionate about and that I don't want to fix. Healthcare, education. There's so many injustices in our nation, and many of those injustices can be solved by getting corruption out of politics. Everything is politicized, even the social issues and the divisive arguments that we have between the two parties. A lot of those things can be solved just simply by getting corruption out of politics. That's not a Democratic issue. That is an issue that spans both parties. I truly believe in my heart that if we get forward a strong anti-corruption legislation, that we will be better off as a nation, and many of the issues that are plaguing our society can be fixed. So the Anti-Corruption Act, I think it's the American Anti-Corruption Act, which has been written up, is something that will be put forward. I understand and I know that it's not going to pass because we have corrupt politicians. They don't want it. Okay? But whenever it does fail, we'll at least be able to identify the politicians who voted against it, and hopefully we can weed them out and put it forward again and get an anti-corruption legislation put forward.
Okay, next question. What can be done about the loss of talented, experienced staff at various government agencies? And we're starting with Levi.
Well, having worked for a federal agency and the Defense Contract Management Agency, one of the things that's actually plaguing us is the hiring and firing process. I know that sounds harsh coming out of the gate, but let me explain. When I was initially hired, I was hired on an expedited hiring process, but yet I didn't get on board for 10 months, okay? The firing process, if you have an employee that sits on the phone all day long and talks gossip with their buddy or their friend or whoever else, it's a minimum 2 years to put that person through a process of getting them out the door. No matter what. I mean, unless they commit fraud, I mean, that's immediate dismissal. But just flagrant, just dereliction of duty, 2 years minimum to fire a person. And that causes problems in getting talented people in, people who want to get in there and work. Keep in mind also, this firing process, you get to, say it takes 24 months to fire someone. At month 23, if that person decides they want to get back to work really fast, you gotta start the whole process all over again so they can work that 1 month. Get out of jail, start the process all over again. So it's the hiring and firing process. There's multiple things that plague the federal agency system, but that's just one of them. People feel too comfortable in their job. Thank you.
I don't know. Now, are we referring to the people that have been going basically in and out of throughout the Trump administration, or?
Yeah, for instance, the State Department.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, many of the people that I think are leaving, a lot of people have left simply because they don't want to have Trump's presidency, on their under their wing. They don't want Trump to hurt their career ultimately, and he can do that. People are going to look down on anybody who's served underneath Trump, and so that has a lot to do with it. I think Levi obviously knows more about this than I do, but honestly, I don't know. Hopefully we can put forward a president that people will be proud to work for in 2020. And, I think that could solve a lot of our problems. But do I have a solution to keep people who want to be in there and fight against that administration in? Honestly, I don't know off the top of my head. That's one issue that I haven't had a chance to think too much on.
Could I add one thing real quick? Majority of the federal agents are excellent people. I don't want to send them on. Okay, but you have the bad seeds who I just finished discussing.
Okay.
I'll let Levi have
Majority of those people are good people.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to share this. My mom retired from the VA, and she wasn't really ready to retire, but she had reached whatever that plateau is. And because she was active and engaged and a leader in her, I think it was called Federal Employee Organization, I forgot what the title was, but she wanted to continue working, but she couldn't. And I think we could extend it for those who are wanting to stay and continue giving good service, because she kept getting promoted and she served. The other thing I think would be helpful is that if we put forth a really good recruiting program and went to our colleges and got our best and our brightest to come into government instead of gearing them into business and computers and other things. We need good government employees to run this country. And then I would like to do something that we do in the education profession. When we know someone is going to retire and they're good at their job, let's let them be a mentor for part of their job time. And they take those new people coming in and mentor them on how to successfully do their job. So you got somebody that know they're going out at a specific time, and they're going to be bringing in the new people and training them on the finesse and the skill needed to do that job. So it's a win-win for everybody.
I think Ruby hit it right on the head there, on the nail. The problem that we have with our government right now is it's not exciting for people. When you get out of college, you want to go and you want to be able to make six figures. You want to be able to have a huge home, have a boat maybe, but you don't want to go into government. And so what I think we've got to start doing is we've got to put those training programs in place. We've got to make individuals understand how important it is that we have leaders in every department that can lead our country forward. And what we've also got to make sure is, as Ruby was stating with regards to the people that are retiring that are excellent individuals, that before they are retiring, that we're bringing people in younger that can train from them and learn from their experience. Because when you have people that have that wealth of knowledge, but you don't have anyone to give it to, then you lose all that wealth of knowledge. So I would definitely make sure that we invest in some type of program that would allow individuals to learn from the people that have been in these positions for so long and get the knowledge to be able to move forward.
And our last question, who is your political hero and why? And we're starting with you, John.
So,
this is also closing statements, so you have 3 minutes.
to do part in the, gotcha. So, at my kickoff party, a quote that I used was from Lyndon B. Johnson. And he is the individual that I see as my political hero. He fought to make sure that the Voting Rights Act was put into place to allow African Americans to vote. But he also fought against discrimination and for poverty. He implemented the Medicare and Medicaid programs, which have been able to help individuals who are disabled or above 65, and those who cannot afford health insurance, food stamps. All those programs Lyndon B. Johnson was able to put into place. But the one thing that I admire about him, and the one thing that I try to strive, is that I'm continuously fighting for civil rights. As a gay man, I know what it's like to have to deal with people looking at you differently. But I also know that I don't, as a white man, understand what it's like for other people. For people of color, I can't understand what they go through. And so as a representative, I would make sure that I'm fighting for them, as well as the people that I can understand as being gay. And so that is why I got in this race. This race isn't about us up here. It's about the people of the 6th Congressional District of Texas. We're fighting for you all. Whether any of us get elected, we're going to make sure that your voices are being heard. Because that's what a representative is supposed to do. They're not supposed to be worrying about the lobbyists or the big businesses, and they're not supposed to be worrying about how they're going to get reelected. What they're supposed to be worrying about is the people that they represent. So we ask you, and I know all of us will say that, make sure you go out and vote. As I said this morning, we've marched, we've rallied, we've protested. But if we want our voices to be heard, we've got to go and vote. And hopefully if that happens, then we will have a Democrat in this seat that is willing to represent everyone, not just the Democratic Party, but everyone in this district. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Now I need to ask again, what was the question before I was listening to John and I forgot the question. Okay.
Who is your political hero and why? And then your closing remarks.
Okay, now that's hard for me to do because I admire Abraham Lincoln so much because he ran for Senate twice and he lost. He ran for state rep twice and he lost. He ran for a local office and he lost. And then he ran for vice president and he lost. He ran 6 times before becoming president of the United States. And now when you think of the best president in the country, who do you think of? Abraham Lincoln. Just think what would happen if he'd stopped at number 5. One of my heroes is also Shirley Chisholm because she was the first woman to run for president. She didn't ask anybody for permission. She didn't care if it was politically incorrect. She did it. And then my third person is Barack Obama. And I like it because he was a trailblazer, a man with a funny name, most unlikely to become president, young, and a lot of people said inexperienced. And I think he's made quite an impression and made quite a footprint on this nation. And in closing, I just don't know where to start. I am so happy to be here with you all. I get motivated and passionate. The more I meet people and go places, the more excited I get about what I'm doing. I'll think I'm tired. I'll tell Faith, oh, Faith, I'm tired. I walk in a room full of people and all of a sudden the energy from the room becomes my energy. And it just motivates me to do better and to try to be the best person I can be for the citizens that are in District 6. We came to our platform, and when I say we, I'm talking about my campaign. We did a poll called Ruby's Listening. And we just asked people, what is it that's important to you? And when they told us that, we built our platform. And that's what I would be doing as your congresswoman, if that's what the victory gives. I would be fighting for education because I know education is very, very important. It's the only thing that everybody really knows we must have because education takes a baby in kindergarten and transforms them into a graduate in high school or a college graduate if that's what they want to do. I want to also work to improve our career tech programs and our STEM programs, because that's the future. And that's where the jobs are going to be. We need to make sure that we have our kids ready when they come out of out of high school, so that they can go into those high-tech jobs. They can go into those jobs that people are not filling. I think it's 84 Lumber that's begging for people to come and work for them, but they need some specific skills. We need to marry those skills that are out there that are not necessarily college with the high demand and prepare our kids to do so. So I would provide incentives. We live on grants in public schools, and I would be pushing grants to do more career technology. Also, I'm fighting seriously to lower the age by which a child can become an apprentice. A lot of our kids finish high school and they've got all the skills to go be an HVAC person. I don't even know what HVAC means, but I know it's important, okay? And they get out of the high school and they're ready to go to work, but they're too young, so they go work in the Whataburger, and then they get caught up in that and they never fulfill their potential that they're trained to do, because they start making obligations where they've got to pay those bills and they can't go out and do what they need to do. So I would be definitely pushing for career education along with college prep as well. And I'm also, I told you I talk about my livable wage plan. I'd like to move us from $7.25 an hour the first year to $10 an hour. The second year, I'd like to move it to $12 an hour, and the third year, I'd like to move it to $15 an hour. That's something that small businesses can manage. That's something that large corporations can manage. I think it's amazing that Buc-ee's, everybody knows about Buc-ee's in here, right? I was there yesterday, and they sort people out at $12 an hour at Buc-ee's, a convenience store that pumps gas and sells these little popcorn things. Now, if they can do that at $12 an hour, why can't we do the same thing when it comes to healthcare and other service industries? So I believe we need to pay a livable wage, which is really $15 an hour. And of course, healthcare is important to me. I want to fight for veterans because they fight for us. And then they come back and they have to wait 6 months to get into the VA in Dallas. Some of them die while they're waiting. Some of them have PTSD and they commit suicide before they can get to that first mental health screening. We've got to do better for our veterans, for our senior citizens, for our disabled children and adults, and we need to make darn sure that we include mental health in our health care services, because that's been getting short shrift for a long time, and the proof is in the pudding in these killings. Those are the things that I'll be pushing for as your Congresswoman, and I want to come back and have Congresswoman on the corner, so I could be over here at the corner of Green Oaks and Bowen, right outside this library, having a meeting with you, and we could maybe have coffee and cookies on a Saturday, and you could get to see me instead of waiting to make an appointment to come see me in some office in a corner somewhere in an office building. I want to be ready to serve you. I want to be able and available, because I think availability is the most important thing that a lot of our citizens are concerned about. And I just want to say, all the way with Levii Faye. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, I didn't realize it was my turn. So my political hero is probably FDR, Franklin Roosevelt. In college, economics was one of my favorite topics. I studied the Great Depression. I was very impressed with what he was able to do with the New Deal, pushing through 100 pieces of legislation in the first 100 days. With that, he brought into place a number of our institutions that, ensure security for American families. Social Security, you name it. One of the things that concerns me these days is going back to the Great Depression, economically speaking. In 2006, we saw the housing crisis, the subprime mortgage lending, right? I remember President Bush standing at the podium, I believe it was March of 2003, where he said he was going to deregulate mortgage lending because he believed everybody deserved to realize the American dream of owning a home. And while I may agree with him on that latter part, deregulating mortgage lending is what put us into a bad economic situation. Bringing that forward to today, President Trump, and this isn't being talked about, wants to deregulate the banking system. The banking system. Not just mortgages, the entire banking system. That's very scary. Very scary. And I think that's what everybody should be paying attention to along with a number of other of these issues. One of the things, in closing, that's plaguing our district that I've seen, I'm out in the neighborhoods every single day. I was out there today. I drive by so many homes who are non-voters. You know, movements don't start in Washington. Movements don't start in Austin. And they don't start on this panel. They start with groups like yours. We have to get out, get people voting. We are not a red district. We're likely a blue district that doesn't vote. But it's going to take hard work. We got to cinch up our bootstraps, get our raincoat, get a hat on. Growing up, I was born on a ranch. I raised corn, wheat, and soybeans out in the fields of Kansas. I work in the rain, the snow, sleet, 110 degrees. That's what we need to do to change this district. Get people out to register and to vote. Thank you.
Levi said that we got to get people out to vote. There's so many people out there that don't vote because they don't believe there's a candidate that's truly for them. I'm not a politician. Like I said, you know, I'm just an average citizen who's tired of my options. I've talked to so many people who have given up, and I'll get to the question in a second. I've talked to so many people who have given up on voting because there's just nobody in it for them. You know, look at the egos of a politician. That's why people don't vote. They're not in it for us anymore. The politician that I'm supportive of Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders got me involved in politics. I admire him because I'm an activist. He was an activist before he became a politician. Show me somebody that's willing to get arrested for a cause, and that's somebody who is truly for the community and justice. So I admire Bernie Sanders. He got me involved in politics, and we need more politicians like him. He's somebody that stands up against corruption. You know, again, you know, he spoke out for marriage equality before it was popular. You know, he in that instance that he did get arrested, he got arrested because he was fighting for civil rights. He was fighting to desegregate housing for, I think it was Chicago University. You know, that's what we need. That's what we need to represent us. And ultimately, that's what I'm all about. I've proven to the community that I'm going to put them before myself. And I dedicate my life to justice. And I really hope you all can be supportive of my campaign and going forward. And, you know, if we don't go forward, I hope that you all have listened to what I've said. You know, we need change in our political system if we're ever going to go forward and really achieve justice in the things that I think a lot of us here support. So I really appreciate y'all's support going forward. Thank you.